Right, good morning, good morning. Here we are again after their little holiday. They've had a break for a week. We're back now. 3rd of June, 2026. Prime Minister's question time. So let's see what they've got to say for themselves today. Obviously, there's been lots pointed towards the Southampton Constabulary and what's been going on down there. But don't forget, hit that like button and please make sure you're subscribed. Thank you very much. And as soon as we get going, we get the going, we'll pass it over to them, okay? And good morning, everyone. Good to see everybody here. It's good to see you all.
Before we begin to questions, I want to congratulate the men's House of Commons tug of war team, captained by Sir James Cleverly, who yesterday beat the House of Lords team to win the Macmillan Cancer Tugger of War 2026 in aid of the great charity. I was the last-minute addition to the team to ensure there was victory. I'd also like to say well done to the women's team, captained by Tonia Antoniazzi, including Madam Deputy Speaker Caroline Noakes, who put on a valiant fight against the Lord's team, but unfortunately lost this year, the first time they've ever lost. Order, order. We now come to questions to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Peter Swallow.
Question 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 1, 2 and 7 together, but before doing so, may I pay tribute to Sir Desmond Ray, who died recently. He played an important role in the peace process in Northern Ireland, particularly through the transformation of policing as the first chair of the Northern Ireland Policing Board, and I'm sure the whole House will join me in sending condolences to his family. I welcome the clarity provided by the Supreme Court in the Dillon case, which has confirmed that the ICRIR is capable of delivering human rights compliant investigations, and reaffirms the government's position on the interpretation and application of Article 2 of the Windsor Framework.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Terrorists were responsible for the vast majority of deaths during the Troubles. Many of these murders remain unsolved, and the last Tory government's Legacy Act sought to offer immunity to the perpetrators. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that this is wrong in principle? And can he provide an update on when he plans to move the approval motion for the remedial order to repeal it in the other place?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his question. I agree with him that seeking to give immunity to terrorists who committed the most terrible crimes, including the killing of police officers and soldiers and many members of the public, was profoundly wrong. It is also wrong in principle. On the remedial order, now we have the Dillon judgment. We'll be bringing it forward as soon as parliamentary time allows.
Flower Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Supreme Court found wholly in the government's favour. Does he agree with me that the government now have a responsibility to put in place legislation that delivers justice for victims and survivors of the Troubles, who are both civilians and veterans, and that upholds the special duty of care to veterans?
I do indeed agree with my honourable friend. That is exactly what the Troubles Bill will do. It is essential to build confidence across all communities, which the Legacy Act failed to do, put in place protections for our veterans and enable all families who are seeking answers to request information through a reformed Legacy Commission.
Phil Britton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the proud son of a Northern Ireland veteran myself, I wish to put on the record my eternal gratitude to the brave men and women of our armed forces who served our nation in Operation Banner. With that in mind, can the Secretary of State reiterate to the House today how many veterans have been convicted for offences committed during the Troubles, and how this compares to the number of paramilitaries who have been successfully prosecuted?
Well, can I ask my honourable friend to pass on my thanks, and I'm sure the thanks of the whole House, for his father's service. He and all those who served deserve our eternal gratitude. As he knows, the number of service personnel convicted of Troubles-related offences was very small, only one in the last 28 years, whereas between 25,000 and 35,000 paramilitaries were sent to prison during the Troubles. And of the current 10 live cases, 8 relate to paramilitaries accused of killing or attempting to kill soldiers and police officers, paramilitaries that the last government wanted to give immunity to.
Alex Easton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Secretary of State agree that the Supreme Court judgment in the Dillon case reinforces vital legal protections for our security forces, creating a more secure environment? And will he join in me in thanking the courageous men and women of our army and police who fought and defeated terrorism with integrity?
I will certainly join the honourable member in expressing those thanks to all those who served with such distinction in Northern Ireland during the Troubles to keep people safe. The Dillon judgment has provided extremely important clarity about the correct interpretation of the Windsor Framework. As I said a moment ago, it also reinforces the case that the government makes that we need to put protections for veterans which were not contained in the last Legacy Act on the statute book.
Jim Allister.
Can I welcome the rebuff in the Dillon judgment for the Article 2 expansionist demands of the Human Rights Commission and of the Equality Commission. Does the Secretary of State accept that rights in Northern Ireland must evolve according to United Kingdom, not EU law? And thus, on the gender issue, does he accept that the ruling of the Supreme Court on the supremacy of biological sex must prevail?
Well, that is indeed what the Supreme Court found in that particular important case. The Equality Act applies in only limited ways, as the honourable member knows, in Northern Ireland. But on his first point, I do agree with him. That is why the government took the appeal, because the government felt that the interpretation of the Northern Ireland courts on the Windsor Framework and Article 2 in particular was too broad. And the Supreme Court has agreed with the government and said it is a much more narrow interpretation relating to the Troubles and not the expansive interpretation that we had previously seen.
Shadow Minister Challenger first.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And may I first echo the comments of the Secretary of State in relation to the sad passing of Sir Desmond Ray. Now, in response to the Dillon judgment, a Northern Ireland spokesperson said on the 7th of May that we welcome the clarity provided today by the Supreme Court, which has confirmed that the ICRIR is fully equipped to deliver human rights compliance investigations. So does the Secretary of State therefore accept that the courts have determined that the ICRIR, as presently constituted, is sufficiently independent to conduct its investigations? And if so, Mr. Speaker, why is there any need to make these cumbersome changes in his proposed bill?
Well, I've said for the dispatch box many times before that the courts previously had found that the ICRIR was independent, and the Supreme Court has dealt with the two particular issues that have been identified by the Court of Appeal in Northern Ireland. But I already indicated to the House the government proposes to make amendments to the disclosure provisions, which I think are right and proper, compared to those that were contained within the Legacy Act. But it remains the case that the last Legacy Act did not command confidence on the part of all. It's no good, honourable members, shaking their head. It did not command confidence on the part of all communities in Northern Ireland. That is why the changes are necessary.
Gavin Roberts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State will know that the howls of outrage from the Article 2 expansionists have been proven to be wrong. And yet those same howls of outrage have been repeated ad nauseum by the Irish government. And they continue with their state case against this country, and they continue to assert that there is an incompatibility with the ICRIR. In doing so, they refuse to respond to the requests of victims. They have not responded once to the ICRIR for information from the Guards, and as he heard with the victim in our presence just last week, the Garda unit, the much-feted Garda unit, doesn't even answer the phone. will the Secretary of State now challenge the Irish Republican Government to withdraw their case and to recognise compatibility with Article 2?
Well, as I have said to the Right Honourable Gentleman a number of times before, the government's view, and it is reinforced, of course, by the Dillon judgment, that the legislation that we are bringing forward, combined with the judgment, means that there is no basis for the interstate case. But it is, of course, a matter for the Irish government to take a decision about what they do about that. The other argument for the legislation that we are putting forward is it will enable precisely the cooperation that the Right Honourable Gentleman is seeking, and which will be so important to many families in Northern Ireland, including the families of service and police personnel who were killed and injured during the Troubles, and there may well be information that the Irish Government can now provide. That is another strong argument for the legislation.
Robinson.
Speaker, the Secretary of State must know that victims in Northern Ireland would like him to stand up for them, to challenge the excess and the eccentricities of the Republic of Ireland government, and to ensure that when they promise they will provide information, that they do, and that their reluctance to do so has now been proven hollow. But gender's already been mentioned, and he knows that the Dillon case was silent on some of the other expansionist parts of the quest on Article 2. He's indicated his support for the Supreme Court's view, but will he ensure that he defends that view in court?
Well, I reject the suggestion that I, in some way, am not standing up for victims, because the legislation that we have brought forward is about trying to give confidence to all victims in Northern Ireland. And as he knows, he was one of many critics of the immunity provisions in the Legacy Act, which had no support in Northern Ireland, didn't command support from any of the political parties, was wrong in principle, and was never even commenced by the last government. Now, in relation to the Irish government, we should judge each other by the steps that we take. And I would just point out to him that since we last had an exchange on this matter, the Irish government has now legislated, it's just awaiting the Irish President's signature, to enable witness evidence to be given to the Omagh bombing inquiry. That is a sign of the Irish government's good faith.
Three, please, Mr. Speaker.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 3 and 4 together. There is rightly huge pride in the defence sector in Northern Ireland. Aerospace and defence are worth more than £2 billion a year. This defence growth deal will unlock even more opportunities for businesses, workers and apprentices.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. One of the many things I've learnt on the excellent Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme with the Navy this year is the importance of UK defence manufacturing for our economy and for our national security. In Southampton, we've got Techiva and Leonardo, and of course in Northern Ireland, there's Navy shipbuilding at Harland and Wolff. Does the Minister agree that the Northern Ireland defence sector plays a vital role in defending the UK and protecting our allies?
My honourable friend is right. Businesses are not only thriving and with that creating good jobs, they're also protecting us and our allies, like Ukraine from Russian aggression. I am proud of Northern Ireland's critical role in defending our country and protecting our allies.
Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Northern Ireland defence sector already makes substantial contribution to the local economy, supporting well-paid, highly skilled jobs right across the region, with at least 900 jobs directly supported. Does he agree with me that this is, as well as benefiting national security, this new investment will also benefit the wider economy, including my own constituency of Ashford?
He is absolutely right, Mr. Speaker. This investment is a win-win-win. We protect ourselves, our allies and our economy, and boost with it the opportunities for people to get good, long-lasting and rewarding jobs.
That's embarrassing.
Has the Minister seen the report by Tech UK published this week, which has members across Northern Ireland in the defence sector, focusing particularly on tech, and its concern that the absence of the defence industrial strategy has been the single biggest cause of retardation of its members' business and particularly affecting employment? And what does that say for growth in Northern Ireland?
I haven't read the report from Tech UK. I look forward to reading it. I think the honourable member might mean the Defence Investment Plan, which will be published, we're hoping, next month before the NATO summit.
Samuel Wilson.
Northern Ireland has skills, technology and infrastructure to contribute to the defence industry across the United Kingdom. But Sinn Féin Economy Minister doesn't want defence jobs. Will the Minister assure us that the attitude of Sinn Féin will not be a deterrent to these vital jobs coming to Northern Ireland?
Well, we are very proud of the investment we're making into the Northern Ireland economy and into an already booming defence sector, and I think people from right across Northern Ireland welcome the investment into good jobs.
David Smith.
5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
The first duty of any government is to protect its people. This government is ensuring that we all feel the benefit of the investment in defence. Take, for example, the £1.6 billion deal to supply missiles to Ukraine. Manufactured in Belfast, built by Thales, supporting hundreds of jobs and tripling production capacity. This is important work that I'm sure the whole House welcomes.
Smith.
Very honourable friend for that answer, and welcome the good news that this week alone that Thales in Belfast has given a £36 million contract to provide those multi-role missiles, and which will support 700 highly skilled jobs in Belfast. So can I ask the Minister, does he agree that the defence industrial strategy represents a huge opportunity for job creation and economic growth in regions like Northern Ireland and in constituencies like mine in North Northumberland?
Of course, the dedication and professionalism of our armed forces, I think, is respected across this House, the country and the world, and standing behind them must be a strong defence industry. And with this plan, businesses right across the United Kingdom can play their part in taking our defence industry to the next level.
Jim Shamley.
Speaker, can I thank the Minister of State very much for that answer. Taking into account the world-class engineering capabilities already proven by industrial icons Shorts, Harland & Wolff, Thales in Northern Ireland, will the Minister ensure that the Defence Growth Deal specifically leverages the existing high-tech supply chains and advanced manufacturing skills base across areas like Strangford and my constituency to supercharge our regional private sector growth and ensure that this rising tide lifts all the manufacturing ships in Northern Ireland who have the capacity to do so much more.
I will absolutely do all I can to ensure that. I've met many of those businesses and many small businesses from across Northern Ireland to discuss the Defence Growth Deal. He'll be pleased to see there's a focus on skills and supply chains to support more of those businesses.
Then good job. Question number 6. Joe State.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will ask questions 6 and 10 together. The Troubles Bill will return to the House early this session. In the meantime, I have been consulting widely on the legislation. I will bring forward amendments designed to improve the process for victims, further safeguard veterans and differentiate between the role played by security forces and paramilitary terrorists.
Then good job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In his wide consultation, did he consult General Sir Nick Parker, who suggested that there should be no further criminal investigations, inquests, inquiries or prosecutions unless there is new compelling evidence which wasn't available at the time of the event?
Well, I have consulted and met with a very wide range of people. I have seen the amendment that has been put down that the House will come to when we get to the committee stage. But as he will be aware, there is already provision in the bill for protection from repeated investigations unless the Commission regards it as essential. But I recognise the need to build upon what we've already contained in the bill, and that will be visible when the amendments are published.
David Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The previous Troubles Bill drew criticism from 9 former 4-star generals, regimental associations and veterans across the country. Now, the Defence Secretary told this House earlier this week that he had dealt with their concerns and would make significant amendments. But every time we ask for detail, we are stonewalled. So will the Secretary of State lay out today exactly what protections he's proposing and guarantee that no veteran will be hounded through the courts?
Well, we are looking at amendments to improve the process for families, to further safeguard our Operation Banner veterans and ensure oversight of how the protections work, make it clear that there is no equivalence, and never was, between the actions of terrorists and the conduct of our armed forces and the police in trying to protect life, and ensure that coroners and the Commission take proper account of the circumstances in which our armed forces were operating, all of those will be consistent with the joint framework and with the government's human rights obligations, and I hope the opposition would welcome all of those things.
Chair of the Select Committee, Tony Antoniazzi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During our inquiry on legacy, we heard serious concerns from victims and survivors about the government's approach to information disclosure. In Dillon, the Supreme Court showed a significant degree of deference to government on national security grounds. What reassurances can the Secretary of State give to families and survivors that national security will not be invoked to withhold information simply because it is uncomfortable for the state, rather than its disclosure would present a genuine risk to the public?
Well, as my honourable friend, the Chair of the Select Committee, knows only too well, ultimately responsibility for national security rests with ministers, and Dillon and indeed the Thompson judgment confirmed that. But as I already indicated, I have proposed in the bill changes to the disclosure provisions that were contained previously, including requiring the Secretary of State to conduct a balancing exercise when considering each case, and also to give reasons. And the Supreme Court also made it quite clear that the Secretary of State does not have a veto, because any decision can be subject to judicial review.
Sir Secretary of State Alex Burke.
The Secretary of State will have seen reports in the Belfast Telegraph that prior to 1985, a very large part of the gelignite used in IRA bombs was routinely stolen from a single factory in the Republic, from County Meath. The supply amounted to many tons of explosives, and it took the lives of many hundreds of people. At the time, British intelligence repeatedly raised concerns with Dublin. Nothing was done, despite the factory allegedly being in receipt of Irish state subsidy. Following these revelations, will the Secretary of State commit to writing to the Taoiseach to ask him to hold an urgent public inquiry into the Enfield explosives factory?
Well, I have indeed seen the reports that the honourable gentleman refers to, and one of the reasons for the Troubles Bill, as I've already explained, is to facilitate cooperation with the Irish authorities in relation to all of these matters. We cannot undo the past, but what we can do is to provide information for those whose lives were lost as a result of the use of those explosives, by full cooperation taking place between the Irish authorities and the Legacy Commission. We require the bill in order to make that happen.
With all due respect, the Secretary of State did not answer my question. This is an extraordinary missing piece of the puzzle in the story of the Troubles, in the story of how the IRA obtained weapons which killed people in our country. The Secretary of State is perfectly within his rights to raise this with his opposite numbers and to ask them to conduct a full public inquiry. On behalf of the victims, will he do so?
I undertake to the honourable gentleman and to the House, since he has raised the matter directly with me, to raise it with the Irish authorities, because they will have seen the exchange that he and I have just had.
Paul Cole, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The May review into the ICRIR describes a toxic, divided and disrespectful senior culture, along with structural weaknesses in the governing legislation. It also raises concerns that the government's forthcoming Troubles Bill will make matters worse. However, in his response to the review, the Secretary of State appeared to suggest it's simply up to the ICRIR to sort this out. Even though the ICRIR is sponsored by his department, the review was commissioned by his department, and his department is now legislating to rebadge the failing body as the Legacy Commission. So will the Secretary of State tell the House whether he accepts he is ultimately responsible for Peter May's 19 recommendations being followed, an update on whether the NIO plan is still on schedule, and how the Troubles Bill is to be amended to remedy the structural shortcomings exposed in the review?
Well, it is, I say to the honourable gentleman, it is a joint responsibility between the independent commission established under the legislation put in place by the last government. Some of the things that have been uncovered are evidence of why we need to reform the way in which the commission works, which is what the Troubles Bill will seek to do. We have a joint plan that we are working on together. I have made my displeasure very clear to every single one of those who sit on the Legacy Commission board. It is not acceptable what was found, but we also have to acknowledge the report also said there's a lot of committed staff and nothing must get in the way of them carrying on with their work to find answers for families.
Mr. Speaker.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 8 and 9 together. Public service reform is needed, and that's exactly what we're doing. Just last week, we announced a £42 million package to invest in digitising prescriptions, because with 45 million prescriptions issued every year, the service is inefficient, expensive, and we're changing that.
Kevin.
I'm grateful to the Minister for his answer. Thanks to this government's investment in public services, Northern Ireland received its record funding settlement and spending review. With this in place and the extra transformation funding, does my honourable friend agree that it is now up to the executive in Northern Ireland to deliver the changes that are so clearly needed in Northern Ireland's public services?
Yes, but as I've always said, it's not just a question of cutting a cheque and walking away. Of course, we have given more money to the executive than ever before in the history of devolution. I'm glad that's welcomed on our benches, but we also bring partnership working to ensure public services can turn the corner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of my constituents in Luton South and South Bedfordshire have close family ties to Northern Ireland and understandably take interest in health outcomes in Northern Ireland and the UK. Does the Minister agree with me that when it comes to public health, all parts of the UK can learn something from each other? And can he update the House on conversations between the UK Government and the Executive on respective successes in improving patient outcomes?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. No person has a monopoly on good ideas, and no government does either. I want the best for the whole of the United Kingdom. Where Northern Ireland leads the way, we can try and roll that out across the rest of the UK. But where it needs support, like on digitising prescriptions, we'll do that too. It's about working with the Executive to improve patient outcomes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland won't thank me for saying this, but whenever we're having these discussions about transformation of public services in Northern Ireland, you can either have good public finances or you can have an unreformed Stormont, but you can't have both. Now, with 3 parties in Northern Ireland supporting reform proposals in the last number of weeks, when is this government going to get serious about giving Northern Ireland the means in which to govern itself and get round the table and start discussions on reform of Stormont?
Well, those are conversations that are ongoing. We've had those. We had a Westminster Hall debate recently on there, and we'll have further conversations with party leaders. But I would also gently say that it can't be a substitute for improving services now. Improvements can be made. We've talked, myself and the honourable member, about cancer waiting times. We can do things now. It doesn't have to wait for conversations about reform as well.
Question, Robin Swan.
Much, Mr. Speaker. Transformation needs to be embedded by a recurrent budget. We're 3 months into this financial year in the Northern Ireland political speed. We still don't have a recurrent budget. So what steps is the Northern Ireland office taking to bring about a recurrent financial budget in Northern Ireland?
Well, not only have we given a record settlement more than ever before in the history of the Executive since devolution, we're supporting the Executive, we're having discussions, we're encouraging them to set a budget so that the people of Northern Ireland can see the improvement in public services they really need.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I'd like to pay tribute to former colleague Lord Alan Hazelhurst, who died this week. Although we come from opposite sides of the Pennines and the Isle, Alan served this House initially as the MP for Old Lancashire seat of Middleton and Prestwich from 70 to 74. Before, he represented Saffron Walden from 77 to 2017. He was also my immediate predecessor as Deputy Speaker and Chairman of Ways and Means from 97 till 2010. He was a distinguished and respected parliamentarian, serving on numerous committees during his time in the House, as well as playing a leading role with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Friends will know Alan was mad about cricket. Along my father Doug, they were prominent and long-serving officers of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on cricket. And I know Alan took his passion to the next level with his many novels about the sport. In 2018, he was appointed a life peer, served in the House of Lords until he retired at the end of 24. I'm sure members across the House will like to join me in sending our condolences to Lord Hazelhurst's wife, Lady Angela, his children and grandchildren, family and friends who are very much in our thoughts today. We now come to Prime Minister's questions. Dr Ros Savage.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question number 1.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I also pay tribute to Lord Hazelhurst? I know he will be deeply missed, particularly on the benches opposite. Mr Speaker, the findings of the recent Spring Hill inquest into the tragic deaths in July 1972 of Father Noel Fitzpatrick, Patrick Butler, Margaret Gargan, David McCafferty and John Dougal are sobering. While the circumstances in which the events occurred were undoubtedly challenging, it is the duty of the state to hold itself to the highest standard. The government accepts and deeply regrets these findings and recognises their gravity. On behalf of the government, I want to apologise unreservedly to the families for what happened and for the grief and trauma that they have endured since the tragic deaths of their loved ones. Mr Speaker, I also want to place on record our deepest condolences to the family of Lance Corporal James Freeman, who died in a tragic accident on Sunday. Mr Speaker, I'm also aware of a Royal Navy helicopter crash this morning in Devon. This will be a deeply worrying time for the families, and more information will be set out as soon as possible. Mr Speaker, Henry Novak's family have shown extraordinary dignity after their son's life was stolen in appalling circumstances. He was clearly a kind and thoughtful and much-loved young man. There are serious questions to answer, including how accusations of racism informed police thinking, and we're supporting the IOPC to get to the bottom of what happened. But no matter the pain we feel, there is no justification for more violence and disorder. The attacks directed towards police officers in Southampton last night were disgraceful and completely unacceptable. This is a time for serious work, not rage. And let me be clear, we will ensure anyone found engaging in disorder meets the full force of the law, as we have done before. Mr Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others, in addition to my duties in this House. I shall have further such meetings later today.
Dr Ros Savage.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I would like to echo the sympathies expressed by the Prime Minister for those families recently bereaved, particularly the family of Henry Novak. Corruption appears to be endemic in donations to British political parties. We've had years of Conservative cronyism. We've had allegations of embezzlement in Scotland. We've had undisclosed donations from crypto billionaires and foreign oligarchs. We've even had freebies dished out to some of the honourable members sitting on the benches opposite. The government has already cracked down on some specific sources of donations that favour their political opponents, such as crypto and foreign money. Will the Prime Minister now commit to restoring the faith of the British public in the integrity of our British democracy by putting a cap on all political donations?
Well, can I thank her for her question? We will do whatever is necessary to protect our democracy from foreign influence and from dirty money. And that's why we commissioned the Rycroft review. We capped overseas donations and introduced a moratorium on crypto donations. And we're taking further action as set out in the King's speech. But the £5 million question still remains. Why is the Leader of Reform dodging questions about his donations? And why did he keep it secret in the first place?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I am proud that after decades it is this Labour government putting passengers before profit by bringing GTR, Southern, Gatwick Express into public ownership. The previous government shelved plans to unblock the bottleneck at East Croydon Station. This not only causes delays from Bedford to Brighton, but leaves constituents at Norway Junction Station in lift limbo. So will the Prime Minister look again at the Croydon Area Modelling Scheme, back my campaign to unblock the Croydon bottleneck, And does he agree with me that by bringing our railways back into public hands, it is this government that is getting us back on track?
Well, can I commend her campaign to address the Croydon bottleneck? The last government cancelled work to address this. We will carefully consider the case for upgrades, including step-free access at Norwood. I'm proud that her constituents are travelling on rail services that are now back in public ownership and benefiting from the first freeze in rail fares for 30 years. Labour government transforming our railways and building a fairer Britain.
Come to Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Bendel.
Mr. Speaker, can I echo the Prime Minister's words on Lance Corporal James Freeman and also about the Royal Navy helicopter crash in Devon? I also want to share my deepest condolences to the family and friends of Henry Novak. The circumstances around Henry's wrongful arrest and tragic murder must be a wake-up call to the entire country and our institutions that every life matters, and it is the responsibility of everyone in this House to bring people together, not divide them. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I would also like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to Sir Alan Hazelhurst, Lord Hazelhurst, who died on Monday. Sir Alan served Parliament for over 50 years, 8 of them in the Lords, 40 years as my predecessor as MP for Saffron Walden. And from 1970 to 1974, he was also the Member of Parliament for Middleton and Prestwich. He was respected on all sides of this House, elected multiple times as your predecessor, Deputy Speaker, before he concluded in the other place. Apart from serving his constituents, his greatest passion in Parliament, and perhaps in life, was, as you said, cricket. He was chairman of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Cricket, a role which he encouraged me to take up and which I graciously declined, telling him I knew absolutely nothing about cricket. But I think colleagues should know that the reason Sky Sports can be found on the parliamentary TV network is because of Sir Alan's intense lobbying. There is so much to say, but I think just letting everyone know that he was a good and kind man, and he will be very much missed. My thoughts are with his wife Angela and his children Mark, David and Emma, and his grandchildren. So, Mr. Speaker, can I ask the Prime Minister, by how much has the welfare bill risen since he came to office?
Mr. Speaker, can I just first thank her for her approach and her tone in relation to the Henry Novak tragic case. In relation to welfare, Mr. Speaker, as she knows, we inherited a broken system from the party opposite, and we are now improving that system. We are now improving that system, delivering a youth guarantee, rolling out 300,000 work experience placements, and commissioned Alan Milburn's review into youth unemployment. They're the steps that we were taken. As she will know, the number on welfare went up hugely on their watch, as did the cost under the Shadow Chancellor.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister doesn't seem to know the answer, so let me tell him. Benefits alone have risen by £20 billion since he came to office. The Prime Minister has promised welfare reforms, we heard him say it just now, so can he tell the House why was there no bill in the King's speech to reform welfare?
Well, Mr. Speaker, welfare reform is balancing universal credit so it no longer pushes people away from work. That's what we're doing. They voted against it. Welfare reform is introducing a right to try to incentivise people to take up opportunities. That's what we're doing. They voted against it. Welfare reform is providing record funding on apprenticeships. That's what we're doing. Apprenticeship starts fell by 40% on their watch. And she talks about the welfare bill. It soared to £88 billion, by £88 billion on their watch. Nearly 3 million people were written off. Face-to-face assessments collapsed because of the contracts they agreed. And the person who signed off those contracts was the Shadow Chancellor.
Mr. Speaker, we need to bring down the benefits bill. he complains about the Shadow Chancellor. The bill went up because of the pandemic. And even then, Mr. Speaker, even then, they were asking us to spend more. It's not the Shadow Chancellor who's the problem, it's the actual Chancellor. She's not even here in her place. It is the actual Chancellor. Mr. Speaker, the reason why there is no welfare bill is because the Prime Minister has given up. And he's given up because they have given up on him. On Sunday, the Welfare Secretary was asked 12 times on national radio if he would make cuts to the benefits bill. And 12 times he could not answer. So I will ask the Prime Minister, is he going to cut the benefits bill?
Mr. Speaker, all the measures we're doing to reform welfare, all the measures we're taking to get young people into work are measures to reduce the cost and the numbers of people who are unemployed. And, Mr. Speaker, that's why we've introduced the Youth Guarantee, so that young people can have help into work, that they can then, after 18 months, if they haven't got a job, be given a job for 6 months, supported, which we know is the best way to ensure that they succeed as we go forward. That is the change that we're making, Mr. Speaker. But they introduced the system that is broken. We're reforming it. Did they vote to reform it with us? No, they voted to keep the broken system.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister keeps saying he's bringing in welfare reforms. None of those things are going to cut the bill. Even his own Tim's review explicitly says, this is their review, this is in the terms of reference, explicitly says this is not about generating proposals for further savings. He had a chance to cut benefits. Last year, I remember, they were planning to cut benefits, and on the floor of this House, they U-turned. What did he do when he had a chance? He caved. He caved to all these MPs behind him who don't want benefits brought down. That's why they're sitting silently behind him. So does the Prime Minister agree with his Welfare Secretary that that was the moment he lost his authority?
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of what we're delivering on this side of the House. The fastest growing economy in the G7. They said that couldn't be done. Despite the war in the Middle East, the OECD forecast UK growth is up and inflation is down. Net migration, Mr. Speaker, net migration, which reached nearly 1 million under them, and the Leader of the Opposition was the cheerleader, down by a staggering 82%. The asylum backlog, down by 46%. We're delivering the fastest reduction in waiting times in the NHS in the history of the NHS. That's on top of free school meals, free breakfast clubs and free childcare. And, of course, we're lifting 500,000 children out of poverty. I'm very proud of the work of this Labour government.
Mr. Speaker, he says he's proud of what they're delivering. I'm glad to see the Prime Minister still has a sense of humour, given we all know he's losing his job soon. He has no authority, and we know why. His MPs will not let him do anything. The Welfare Secretary said in private what they won't dare say in public. He said, every meeting I have with Labour MPs is about who can we tax in order to pay more benefits.
Shameful.
Last week, Tony Blair said if the Conservative Party repeats its offer of working together on welfare, Labour should accept. So today, I am repeating that offer to the Prime Minister. Is he ready yet?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, they introduced a system that's broken, and they put the bill through the roof, and now they want to give us advice on welfare. No thanks. No thanks. The question should always be not what benefits people are entitled to, but what help we can give people to change their life. That's what the Work and Pension Secretary was arguing, and he's right about that. And it's a Labour government that's helping people into work. And she asked what we've done. She asked what we've done. More rights for renters, stopping unfair rent strikes. That's 11 million people giving greater security and a place to call home. More rights for workers, Mr. Speaker, including bereavement leave on day one. Ask anyone who's lost someone and they'll tell you just how important it is to have bereavement leave, and lifting 500,000 children out of poverty. We often say in this House that every child should go as far as their talent or ability will take them. It does not happen if they're growing up in poverty. And the party opposite have fought us every turn. I'm proud of what we're delivering. There's much more to do.
Mr. Speaker, the truth is, unemployment has risen every single month since they came into office. You can listen to their chairs get weaker and thinner with every passing moment. The fact is, despite his huge majority, the Prime Minister doesn't have the votes to reform welfare. There is a solution, a Conservative solution. Benefits bill down. Oh! Mr. Speaker, they're all jeering now. I don't know why they're supporting him. He is more than happy to release all their text messages, while all of his has disappeared. Disappearing messages from a disappearing PM. There is a Conservative solution. Benefits bill down, taxes down, growth up. Everyone in this House knows that he is just a caretaker, keeping the seat warm for the Mayor of Manchester. But it doesn't matter who's in charge. Labour MPs will keep asking, who can they tax to pay more benefits? It is in their DNA. Isn't it the truth, Mr. Speaker, that the problem isn't this passive Prime Minister? The problem is the Labour Party.
Forgive me if I don't take too much notice of the Leader of the Opposition. For 14 years, they broke our welfare system, lost control of our borders, presided over the biggest fall in living standards on record, broke the economy, prisons, the NHS. I could go on and on. No wonder she and they are totally irrelevant. The change delivered by this Labour government, the biggest upgrade in workers' rights in a generation, delivered. Renters' Rights Act, delivered. Record funding for our NHS, delivered. The fastest growing economy in the G7, delivered. Lifting 500,000 children out of poverty, delivered. We're going to fight even harder for working people, a stronger and a fairer Britain.
Mr. Speaker, 97 homes in Colsnaughton have been evacuated due to ground movement. That's hundreds of people enduring severe emotional and financial distress. This is absolutely life-changing. The MRA are now conducting an 8-week investigation into who will ultimately be held responsible. In the meantime, my constituents are looking to the UK Government for help. Will the Prime Minister commit to working with the Scottish Government and Clackmannanshire Council to ensure that affected residents receive whatever support they need for a speedy and fair resolution?
Can I thank my honourable friend? And I do know how difficult it is for residents who are not in their homes. And can I reassure him and them that the MRA are carrying out daily investigations to get answers as swiftly as possible. We're also working with the Council to provide support for residents. I can confirm the Energy Minister is in touch with MSPs and will ensure that both my honourable friend and his constituents are kept updated on the next steps.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate myself with your remarks about Lord Alan Hazelhurst and confirm to the Leader of the Opposition that he will be missed on all sides? Can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks about Lance Corporal James Freeman, who was killed in Iraq? Our thoughts are with the family and the unit. And can I also offer our thoughts and prayers to the family and friends of the 17 people who tragically drowned during the recent heatwave, many of them children. Mr. Speaker, the murder of Henry Novak was an evil crime made much worse by the lies of the killer and the police response. The investigation must uncover all things that went wrong, and all police forces must act on its conclusions. Outside court, Henry's father made a powerful plea that his son's murder should not be used to create further division, but should be used to treat knife crime as a national emergency. Does the Prime Minister agree that the victims of knife crime and their families deserve a politics where we come together to solve these problems and not use them as a political football?
Can I first join him in paying tribute to the 17 people who lost their lives in the heat wave, many of them, as he says, young, and each of them tragic, and send our condolences to their families. In relation to the case of Henry Novak, can I thank him for the approach that he has taken in this as well. It is important in a case like this, which is so tragic, and anybody who's seen the footage will have been deeply moved by it. It is important that we reflect on our own leadership roles here as political leaders. And it is our duty to bring people together at a time like this, not seek to divide people. It is particularly our duty to listen to what the devastated family are asking of us as political leaders. And can I thank all of those that have acted in that way, because I think that's the right way to respond.
Sir Ed Davey.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for his reply and completely agree with him and say that we stand ready to work with the government on serious policies to tackle knife crime. Mr. Speaker, with our armed forces overstretched, Labour now seems to be investing in a new weapon of war, the long-form essay. It gives another meaning to the phrase drone warfare. Tony Blair says the UK should suck up to Donald Trump, kowtow to US tech barons, and go slow on Europe. The Prime Minister must be grateful for this rare endorsement of his agenda. Blair also claims that the sensible people aren't radical and the radical people aren't sensible. Is the Prime Minister concerned that unless he changes course, he will be remembered for being neither radical nor sensible?
Well, he rather spoiled what was quite a good gag. Mr. Speaker, I have to. I'm surprised he hasn't done more to welcome the savings we're delivering for Family Fun Days Out this summer. I really thought that he would have been delighted at the cheaper tickets for soft play.
Speaker, the country is united in its horror at the tragic death of Henry Novak. And would the Prime Minister once again join me in paying tribute to the courage of Henry's family in the face of this tragedy? And will he also join me in calling for the recognition of the serious mistakes made by the police, and that we must learn from those mistakes so that no family may face this tragedy again?
Well, can I thank him for raising this really important case? And my thoughts are with Henry's family. I'm sure the thoughts of the whole House and the whole country. I have watched the body cam footage, as others will have done. I found it really hard. It was harrowing. And as a dad of a 17-year-old boy, I felt sick. I can only imagine how devastated his family are. It is extremely moving. Henry's life has been stolen. His family have responded with incredible and immense dignity and bravery. Now, there clearly are lessons, Mr. Speaker, that need to be learnt, serious questions that need to be addressed, not least this question about accusations of racism informed decision-making in such cases. Henry's father said this: "We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred, or tension." They're the words of a grieving father who's lost his son. We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred, or tension. I think those words have resonated with people across the country. We must not allow this tragedy to be hijacked by anyone who seeks to divide us.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following the horrendous circumstances of Henry Novak's death, can I urge the Prime Minister to consider this? It is now clear to growing millions in this country that we're living under two-tier policing. The instructions that are given to police officers from police bosses are clear and written down in ink. It says you must treat different ethnic groups in different ways. That, apart from the upset and the anger at the circumstances of his death, the anger that you saw spilling out in Southampton last night, and which is in danger,
Condemn the violence.
which is in danger of getting considerably worse, if the public lose trust,
Condemn it.
if the public lose trust in being treated fairly by the police, can he take some action, end this divisive practice of two-tier policing, and make sure that all British citizens are treated the same?
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe there's two-tier policing in this country. I'm really shocked that he pretends to have respect for Henry's family and then acts in this way. They are a grieving family.
Mr. Blash, please. It's a very important question. I want to hear the Prime Minister. If you want to carry on, go outside, please, Prime Minister.
Grieving family have asked us not to respond in the way that the Leader of Reform has responded. They've asked us not to. They have lost their son in the most appalling circumstance. They make a simple plea of us as human beings to please not exploit that. That is their plea to us. We all need to reflect on those words of Henry's father. My response, and the response of others, to be fair, has been focused on the lessons to be learned so we can deliver justice. His response has been to appeal for rage. Rage. That's his response to a father who's lost his son, and ask for that not to happen. Exploiting this tragedy to create grievance and division would be wrong in any circumstances, but to do it when the family are expressly saying, please don't, is unforgivable. It shows exactly who he is.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to echo the comments that the Prime Minister just made.
Absolutely.
In August 2024, my constituent, Holly Woodcock, was found deceased in France, aged 20 years old. Her parents, Lee and Joanna, who are in the gallery today, still have no idea what happened at Holly's friend's holiday villa. They have raised significant concerns with the Foreign Office regarding the investigation, including the inconsistencies of witness statements and timelines, how samples were prematurely destroyed, and how matters raised by French lawyers were dismissed by the investigating French police officers and officials. I'm grateful that the Foreign Office Minister met with me and Mr Woodcock, but I share the family's concerns that our government should do more to press the French authorities to reopen the investigation. So will the Prime Minister commit to look at what can be done to raise this matter with his French counterparts at the highest level to help Mr and Mrs Woodcock get the answers that their daughter Holly deserves?
Can I thank him for raising this case and express my sincere condolences to Holly's family. I cannot begin to imagine the intense distress that they've experienced. My honourable friend will know the Ambassador to France has raised Holly's case with the French Prosecutor General, and I know the Minister of Europe has set out further steps that can be taken and is ready to support the family. But I will reflect, in light of this question, on whether there's anything more that can be done.
Robert.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Lefarydd. Last month, Welsh voters elected a Plaid Cymru government with a clear message, fairness and hope. This means tackling years of neglect by securing funding owed from HS2, a new financial settlement that reflects our nation's needs, and more powers for Wales, especially powers over our natural resources. So would the Prime Minister be open to turning a conversation into real action to fulfil the democratic wishes of the people of Wales? Because now surely is a time for us to work together rather than facing the chaos that threatens us from every corner.
Can I thank her for a question? As she, I hope, knows, I did have a call with the First Minister of Wales just 2 weeks ago and made it clear that this government will work constructively with the First Minister and with the government in Wales, because that's the right thing to do to deliver for Wales.
Tristan Osborne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Prime Minister about our National Health Service and what better treatments can we offer people suffering from memory loss? A very distressing case was recently brought to my attention by a constituent in Waldham, in a village in my constituency, of a man who could not remember his own words, even though he said it on television, that the NHS should not be funded through general taxation. What can we do to ensure my constituents in Chatham and Aylesford secure clarity on future Kent and Medway NHS funding, and what can we do to help the leader of Reform UK?
Well, my honourable friend makes a powerful point. The Reform leader wants everyone to forget that he called for our NHS to be replaced with an insurance-based system. He might want to jot it down to jog his memory. And then he said that if people can pay, they should pay for NHS treatment. So we can help him by jolting his memory here. You cannot trust reform with our NHS. The only way to protect it is to vote Labour.
Rosie Duffield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, Tom Carriage and UK Hospitality launched their That's the Problem campaign. And yesterday, my neighbour from Herne Bay and I hosted industry bodies, chefs Matt Tebbett and Thomasina Myers, hospitality leaders from Manchester, Liverpool, London and Kent, including Andy Burnham's nighttime economy advisor Sacha Lord. All agree with campaigners such as Andy Lennox that the UK's rate of 20% of VAT in hospitality is killing businesses daily. Does the Prime Minister agree that that's the problem? And will he match his candidate in Makerfield's pledge to slash VAT in line with the rest of the EU?
Can I thank her for her question and recognise the challenges that she identifies? That is why we're permanently lowering business rates for retail, hospitality and leisure businesses. Every pub will get 15% off its new business rates bill, and bills will be frozen in real terms for a further 2 years. In relation to VAT, she'll see that we are supporting, by cutting VAT on children's meals in restaurants, particularly over the summer period, with the savings that were set out 2 weeks ago by the Chancellor.
Linda Just.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every year, around 160 university students commit suicide. That's more than 3 every week. Yet there is no established duty of care on universities to protect the health, safety and welfare of their students. This is not about creating excessive burdens on universities, but requiring them to take reasonable steps to prevent injury or harm to their students where the risk is reasonably foreseeable. So would the Prime Minister please meet with me to discuss this issue so that we can do all that we can to prevent our young people dying at university through suicide?
Well, Mr. Speaker, any death from suicide is a tragedy, as everybody across this House will know. We're bringing together students, bereaved families, universities and the NHS to strengthen the mental health support provided to students, and we've appointed a student support champion to drive improvement across our universities, and the Minister will be happy to discuss that and other matters with him.
Andrew Rossen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the Prime Minister has had the chance to study the election results in Havering, with 0 Labour councillors elected in Romford, 0 Conservative councillors for the first time since 1964 across Havering, and the first Reform UK London borough, which shows people's disillusionment with the political establishment. But in his final days as Prime Minister, does he think he can do something for the people of Romford and give us the accident and emergency unit at Queen's Hospital, which the honourable member for Ilford North said he would deliver but failed to do?
Mr. Speaker, we put record investment into the NHS to clear up the mess that he and others left behind. I have studied the candidate for Makerfield, the Reform candidate, since he brings up election. A self-professed sexist, said women who get abortion do it for vanity purposes, encouraged people not to get the COVID vaccine, and said Russia would within its rights to invade Crimea. Reform have got nothing to offer but grievance and division yet again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's comments on Henry Novak and cause for calm over division. The Rugby League family lost a giant last week. John Keir, the former England, Wales and Challenge Cup winning coach, died suddenly on Sunday afternoon on his journey north after commentating on the Challenge Cup finals at Wembley the previous day. After playing for Castleford, his local team, he He moved to teaching and coaching for a total of 700 matches with 9 clubs, including famous underdog Challenge Cup wins with Sheffield Eagles in 1998 and Hull FC in 2005. John loved his sport and was in love, and in turn was loved by the sport. Will the Prime Minister join me in paying tribute to John and sending condolences to his wife Dawn, family and friends?
Can I thank her for raising this and pay tribute to John? We're all deeply sad to hear of the passing. He was a remarkable athlete, coach, and an energetic and enthusiastic champion of his sport. He will be missed by supporters across the country. And I think my thoughts, all of our thoughts, are with his wife Dawn, his family and his friends at this sad time.
Sarah Green.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I spoke to women at an event here in Parliament whose children suffered avoidable harm after they continued taking the epilepsy drug sodium valproate during pregnancy. Doctors knew the risks, patients were not informed, and it's had devastating consequences. I'm sure the Prime Minister would agree that for a government department to commission a report looking at how to provide a redress scheme, it raised an expectation that one was on the horizon. To then not introduce it would be unbelievably cruel. So when will this government respond to the Hughes report and finally establish a redress scheme for these families?
Can I thank the honourable member? We absolutely recognise the harm and huge impact that pelvic mesh has had on so many lives. She will be aware that the Minister of Public Health has been a dedicated campaigner on this very issue. I want to see a full response to the recommendations published as quickly as possible, and I'll make sure the Minister keeps her updated of progress.
Ewan Steinbach.
Mr Speaker, the 10-year bus plan published by the Department for Transport shows that demand for zero-emission buses will double by the end of the decade. Despite this, in Scotland, jobs are being lost in our bus manufacturing sector because overseas manufacturers are winning a greater number of orders and now constitute the majority of new registration buses on our roads, despite an investigation into the cybersecurity of Chinese buses. Will the Prime Minister designate bus manufacturing as a sector critical to our national security?
My honourable friend is right to champion the brilliant, talented workforce building buses in Scotland. Our pipeline will give UK manufacturers the certainty and stability that they need to plan ahead and to be completely effective. And I can reassure him we're working closely with the industry to provide the response and the support that's necessary.
Bob Black.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I welcome the Prime Minister's commitment to combat anti-Semitism. But the regular hate marches we've seen on our streets, with the chanting of globalised the Intifada, has led directly to attacks on Jewish businesses, on synagogues, on individuals in the streets, and now an arson attack on where Jewish people live. So the Jewish people of our country now want to see action, not warm words. Will the Prime Minister therefore commit to the type of action that we need to expel students who commit anti-Semitic acts who are from overseas? Will he take action to prescribe the IRGC? Will he take action to close down the 13 Iran-sponsored charities in this country that spread anti-Semitism? Will he also take action to ensure that all children are taught the horrors of the Holocaust, the importance of not expressing hatred towards one another, and the true history of the founding of the State of Israel? The Jewish people of this country want to feel safe on our streets and in their homes and in our country. So will the Prime Minister take the appropriate action?
Can I thank him for his question? And we are united in our belief that we must fight the poison of anti-Semitism wherever it is found. We are investing more to keep Jewish communities safe, more police patrols, greater security at schools and synagogues, and investing £several million to tackle anti-Semitism within our universities, and bringing in prescription-like powers to clamp down on malign state activity. We will set out further steps in coming days, and I'll make sure he's fully informed of the steps that we're taking.
Aaron Puffin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, less than 48 hours ago, the family of Henry Novak stood on the steps of Southampton Crown Court and gave a courageous and dignified statement in which they said, "We want to use Henry's heartbreaking story to make change for the better. We do not want his death to create further division, hatred or tension. We want his story to help make our streets safer for everyone. Does the Prime Minister agree with me and my constituency neighbour in Southampton Test, Satvir Kaur, that the violence we saw whipped up on the streets of Southampton last night, the criminal damage to innocent people's homes, the injuries to 11 police officers are the total opposite of what Henry's own family clearly and powerfully called for?
Can I thank him for his question and thank him for the discussion that we had this morning about the impact in Southampton, and thank him for the work that he has done along with his fellow MP and, if I may, the Honourable Member for Thurrock, who's been dealing with Henry's family for some time. The attacks directed towards police officers last night were disgraceful and completely unacceptable. There is no justification for further disorder.
Danny Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the Conservatives promised us 40 new hospitals repeatedly that we knew were never going to happen. But the current government is now promising us a new hospital in Hampshire in 20 years' time if it gets built at all. Mr. Speaker, my constituents really rely on our A&E maternity services, but our current hospital has a huge repair backlog and it has rainwater leaking into clinical areas. Will the Prime Minister please break this cycle of governing parties promising us hypothetical hospitals and simply commit to fixing our actual hospital in Winchester?
Can I thank him for his question? I recall he raised this with me, I think, previously at Prime Minister's questions. As he knows, the reorganisation of services is a matter for local integrated care boards who take decisions based on the evidence and engagement with patients. Across the country, patients are benefiting from the £450 million investment that we've provided to expand urgent and emergency care capacity. That's the improvements because of the investment we put in, but it is a matter for his local board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite the efforts of dedicated teachers in Scarborough and Whitby, only 36% of pupils achieve grade 5 and above in both English and Maths GCSE. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that Mission Coastal has the potential to deliver the same transformational impact for young people in deprived coastal communities as the London Challenge achieved, and is the kind of bold and targeted intervention that only a Labour government can deliver?
Can I thank her for her work championing on such an important issue? Mission Coastal will help break the link between background and success, giving the most disadvantaged children mentoring, career support and enrichment opportunities, because we believe that no matter where you grow up, every child deserves the same opportunities to succeed.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government's top-down housing targets, which are about to almost double in my constituency, mean communities like Redbourne and Tring are about to see huge-scale development while infrastructure is bursting at the seams. But while a supposedly affordable new build in my patch is more than £500,000. So no wonder Hannah, one of my sixth formers, says she can never dream of buying a new home and have to leave the place where she grew up. So will the Prime Minister urgently review these targets and come and speak to Hannah and our constituents, see how the targets, these top-down targets, are not delivering the affordable homes, the services we need, or protecting our precious land?
Prime Minister, please.
Look, we inherited a housing crisis with people unable to have the security of their own home or even get onto the housing ladder. We are determined to change that. We have invested £39 billion to deliver more social and affordable homes, prioritising brownfield land. We must build more communities with strong infrastructure, but her party consistently votes against the planning reforms that will actually allow those homes to be built.
Final question, Calvin Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Health Secretary confirmed that all eligible black men will be invited to the Transform trial. As chair of the Prostate Cancer APPG, I welcome this vital step towards screening for this terrible disease, for which black men have doubled risk for both diagnosis and death. Something which Reform have responded to with nothing but divisive weasel words and rage baiting. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that our NHS was founded by Labour to be there for everyone equally, and when there is a proven higher risk, targeting support is equality?
Can I thank him for his work as chair of the Prostate Cancer APPG? This programme is England's first targeted cancer screening programme. We're also funding a major expansion of research and treatment backed by £20 million to help men at the highest risk. We are determined to improve cancer care, and more cancer patients are now being diagnosed on time thanks to Labour's decisions. But of course, there's more to do.
Let the front benches change over.
Okay, just want to say thank you very much, everybody who's been watching today. It's much appreciated. And we see you all next week. Take care, all. And we continue with this now.
We now come to the urgent question. Sir Roger Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am most grateful. Mr. Speaker, would the Secretary of State for the Environment make a statement following the disruption of water supplies throughout the area served by South East Water during the spring recess?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to Sir Roger for asking this question. And I'd like to update the House on the water supply disruption in Kent. I'd like to begin by expressing my sympathy for those affected by this disruption. Being without water is distressing at any time, but particularly during a period of hot weather and school revision and examinations. This is now the third major outage affecting South East Water customers in recent months, and it is simply not acceptable. South East Water reported that thousands of customers were impacted by supply disruptions over the course of the incident, and I am pleased that normal water supply has now been restored. I met with the interim chair and senior operational staff twice during the course of the incident, including on Sunday this weekend, and the DEFRA team met with them daily to hold them to account for this incident and requested that they set out how they will compensate customers for this by the end of this week. Water supply disruption causes significant cost to businesses and impacts the most vulnerable in society. I've heard of a 100-year-old lady without water and a care home in Cranbrook using wet wipes to keep their residents clean. This is simply unacceptable, and the company must take urgent action. I'd like to thank all those working in the Kent Local Resilience Forum, the local authorities, the health and social care partners and civil servants in MHCLG and DEFRA for their hard work to support those affected. I'm also grateful to operational staff and volunteers who worked on the ground to restore water supplies and provide alternative water. A reliable supply of clean water is one of the fundamental foundations of a healthy, functioning society. The situation demands further bold action to deliver fundamental long-term reform, and that's why we're delivering whole-scale reform to the water sector. Through our Clean Water Bill, we will create a new, single, powerful regulator, giving us for the first time a clear system-wide view of company performance and the tools to intervene more quickly when companies fall short. We will put consumers first by introducing a water ombudsman, ensuring customers have a stronger voice and clearer routes to redress. We've already passed the Water Special Measures Act, which introduced the toughest Centrelink powers ever applied to law-breaking water company executives and introduced powers to ban unjustified bonuses. It is vital that South East Water and all water companies deliver on improvements to their infrastructure, but most of all, they must continue to improve their ability to maintain water supplies to their customers, whatever the weather.
We now come to Sir Roger Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for her obvious and genuine concern and for the measures that she sought to take. Can I join her in thanking the very many organisations that sought to help us through this problem? And I include in that employees on the ground of South East Water. Mr. Speaker, you know that thousands of people in Herne Bay, in my constituency, and more thousands of people in Whitstable, in the constituency represented by my honourable friend, the member for Canterbury, were left without water during the 4 hottest days of the year so far. That is totally inexcusable and totally unacceptable. Not only were households disrupted, but at the very time when they should have been having a glorious start to their season, guest houses, hotels, restaurants, pubs were shut. Care homes had frightful problems. A doctor's surgery lost its consultations because they didn't have water. There is no quick fix to this. The Broad Oak Reservoir should have been built 50 years ago. It'll take 10 years if we start tomorrow. But we have to try to make sure that in the coming months, because there will be more hot weather, this doesn't happen for a fifth time across Kent. And Mr. Speaker, finally, could I say that I do believe that the water companies face a very real problem in the regulations as they stand. They are required by law to connect every new house to a supply. They are not consultees in planning applications. We have to correct that. They have to be given a voice because they cannot spirit water out of thin air.
Yeah, well done. Emma Hardy, Minister.
I thank the right honourable gentleman and share his outrage at the situation. And he's quite right to say that one of the answers is the reservoir, and he's quite right to say that it's going to take a long time in which to build it. But it's not just the reservoirs, it's the desalination plants. But it's also they need to do more urgent action on tackling leakage. Too much of the water that is produced is lost through leakage. We're also sort of looking across government at building standards for new homes. How can we make homes more water efficient? Because this is a big problem. And one of the things I hope which will offer him some reassurances, NISTA have been doing some work around mapping to identify areas of the country where we have more acute water shortage problems to look at what we need to resolve it. One of the things I was saying to the company is, like, what are the actions you can take now? There's no excuse for their poor communication. That's something they can fix overnight. They can improve their communication. They can improve their relationship with the local resilience forum. That doesn't cost any money. They can look at the bulk supply deal they have with Southern Water. That's another action they can take. They can accelerate their work on leakage reduction. That's another action they can take. But fundamentally, he's quite right. The answer is building reservoirs and having greater storage of water across our country. And it is quite frankly, I think, ludicrous that we're in a situation where we complain about the rain all through the winter and complain about the drought all through the summer, and we have no way of storing it, and that's something I'm trying to change urgently.
Just to remind her, this is about South East Water, not the water companies. So I'm sure all questions will be linked to that. Sure, Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like many of my constituents, I have lost all faith in South East Water after the repeated failures to deliver adequate standards for customers in my constituency and across Kent. The latest incident left around 4,000 of my constituents having to cope for days with no water entirely, an intermittent supply or low water pressure. South East Water's failure to invest in infrastructure means I have no confidence they will be able to provide a basic standard of service. Moreover, they kept the hosepipe ban until February this year, and there was no preparedness for the hot weather that was coming up. So there is a lack of understanding for the senior leadership within that organisation. So what practical measures the government can do that we will not suffer in this coming summer months?
Minister.
Thank my honourable friend for his question and share with him the outrage of the situation, and he has been a fantastic champion for his constituents in raising this with me on a number of times. In terms of the action that they can immediately take, one of the things we've said to the company is that they need to be prepared for future hot weather during the summer. What is their plan? What is their resilience plan? What actions are they going to take? What are they going to do? Where can they identify immediate things they can take? The longer solution is the storage of water. That is the longer term solution. But I mean, fundamentally, I have to say, Mr. Speaker, this company is a water-only company. It has one job. That's all it has, one job, to supply water, and it's quite frankly astonishing that it is failing to do that at the moment. He will be aware they are under investigation from Ofwat, they're under investigation from the Drinking Water Inspectorate for its actual licence, and because of its recent credit downgrade, it is under investigation as to whether those licence conditions have been broken. So serious actions are being taken against this company now. I will, of course, update the House as soon as I hear more about the things they're going to be taking in the immediate short term. And just also to mention that the CEO has offered his resignation. The chair has already resigned. There is an interim chair, and the CEO is currently there while they're looking to replace him with somebody else.
Shadow Minister Dr Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you for granting this urgent question from my right honourable friend, the member for Herne Bay and Sandwich. And can I thank the Minister for her approach and engagement with this vital issue. It is deeply regrettable, Mr Speaker, that we are here yet again with unacceptable outages from South East Water following the events back in December and January. The shortage of water supply in Kent in these hot conditions has had terrible impact on the local communities. Homes have been without water supply, schools and businesses impacted, farmers and horse owners again fearing not having enough water for their livestock. Local residents have lost confidence in their water supply and are switching to bottled water. That simply is outrageous. These repeated failures are simply not good enough from South East Water. We have heard repeated accounts about poor communication and logistics from South East Water, including difficulties in accessibility to collect bottled water, compromising vulnerable residents. Can the Minister please provide guidance on what is being done to ensure that people can reliably, moving forward, access adequate supply, particularly vulnerable households, and what is being done to ensure vital healthcare delivery can continue uninterrupted? And in these hot conditions, what measures can be put in place so that farmers and horse owners will have enough water for their livestock? What meetings has the Minister had with South East Water, Ofwat, the Drinking Water Inspectorate, local resilience fora and affected councils since this latest disruption? Mr Speaker, we've seen resignations at the top of South East Water, but we are yet to see any change in performance. What enforcement action is being considered against South East Water if it is found again to have failed its statutory duties? And what investment has South East Water committed to improve resilience in Kent, Sussex and other areas, and how will ministers ensure that it's delivered? Does the government accept that repeated water outages are unacceptable? And what steps will ministers take to support people in South East Water's area so that they will not face yet another period of interrupted supply?
I thank the official spokesperson. On the issue of farms, they did, after the last situation, which was raised with me, I think, by the Honourable Lady about, and yourself, about access for livestock. So this time they did make deliveries of alternative water to farms across the region during the instance, or that's what I've been informed. But obviously there's intelligence otherwise. I'm keen to learn and understand that. And they had said they continue to monitor farms at risk areas. On the issue of vulnerable customers, this continues to be a challenge. So one of the things I've been talking to the Cabinet Office around is there a way that we can share more accurate information and data? Because what the water companies say is keeping their priority register up to date is quite challenging, because sometimes people fall in and out of being vulnerable, classified as vulnerable. For example, a lady who's pregnant is classified as vulnerable and needing water, but obviously when she's had the baby, she's no longer classified as being vulnerable in the same way. So how can we maintain accurate records of who's vulnerable and who would need additional water? So I'm having those conversations with the Cabinet Office around, is there a way to share data, but bearing in mind it's sensitive about sharing information, so there's always a complication there. So one thing I would ask all colleagues to do, if we can try and encourage all of our constituents to identify, self-identify through the Priority Services Register if they're classified as vulnerable, so that it can get the expected water. I've met with the interim chair, and we had a more productive conversation, and she is keen to reset relationship. She wants to sort of meet the MPs in the area, to talk to them. She's committed to sort of rebuilding a relationship with the local resilience forum and how they can improve communication. To be fair to her, I think she's been there a few weeks, so this is very, very early on in her interim chairship. So I think there's something that we can work on and build on, because there are things they can do now around communications, and I'm quite concerned by him saying there was an accessibility problem around drinking water stations. In terms of who I've obviously met with the new chair, met with the senior people involved, meet regularly with the Drinking Water Inspectorate and Ofwat on this. There are live investigations following the last incident being held into the company at the moment, and this will continue.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm grateful to my honourable friend for the way that she has approached this, and particularly the fact that she points out that South East Water has one job. However, unfortunately, they are accountable to their shareholders more than they are to the people who they are supposed to be serving. Can I make a suggestion, notwithstanding the reforms that the government has already put in place with regard to the water industry, suggesting that maybe in future, rather than simply fining these companies when they fail so catastrophically, taking that fine, the amount of that fine as stock in the company to be fully held by a locally convened water board, so that residents themselves have some form of control and accountability for the decisions that are made, because otherwise we are relying on extractive capitalism to destroy our water supply.
Minister.
My honourable friend makes a very powerful point, and I do want to highlight that in the white paper we did say in there that where water companies might want to transition to new ownership models, such as not-for-profit, for example, the regulator will develop a transparent process to assess whether that water company's requested move to the new model will go ahead. So we are looking at developing a transparent process if that is something that the water company might want to look at. But in terms of increasing the customer voice, which she's absolutely right about, on day one of this government coming into power, we announced new consumer boards for water companies. The Consumer Council for Water has done the entire country, gathering together different people for these customer panels. They've held one already in the South East Water area, where the customers there can count, very much like a select committee hearing, those water company bosses, and the report from that, obviously, I will share with the House, but is really interesting. The number one issue that came up from this area was communication. Lack of communication and lack of adequate communication was the number one thing they can tackle. And that doesn't require millions and billions on a reservoir. That just requires competence.
Sarah Dyke, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Mr Speaker, leaving thousands of South East Water customers without access to drinking water has become a pattern of neglect, enabled by a water system that fails to hold water companies accountable for their actions, whether it be environmental destruction or consistent water disruptions. This situation is simply unacceptable, but the government's timid reforms do not rise to the scale of the challenge. We don't need more tinkering. We need a total structural overhaul. So given the repeated failures in water supply and sewage pollution seen in South East Water area and across the country, will the Minister back Liberal Democrat proposals for a mutually owned public benefit model for water companies, focusing investment on the environment, on customers and infrastructure, rather than lining the pockets of water company bosses like South East Water?
Minister.
Of course, South East Water is a water-only company, not a sewage company, and I think there's many things we can criticise them for, but sewage pollution is not one of them. Since we came into power, as I said, on day one we introduced the customer panels. We've secured £104 billion private investment. We passed the Water Special Measures Act. We gave the EA more powers to monitor water companies and uncover wrongdoing. In fact, the EA have done over 10,000 inspections into water companies. They've uncovered 81 examples that have gone through to criminal investigation. And I do want to gently point out that under the previous government, coalition government, funding for the EA was cut by more than a half. We've also introduced criminal liability for water policies, introduced automatic penalties, reduced the burden of proof, introduced cost recovery, banned the sale and supply of wet wipes, looked at reforming our bathing waters, established the Water Delivery Task Force, and yes, there's more to do with the reforms we have. And on top of that, of course, we've abolished Ofwat. And on top of that, there is more work to do. But I think I stand quite proud on the record that we've already taken after years of inaction.
Helen O'Donoghue.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for bringing this question. It's been an extremely distressing incident for my constituents served by South East Water on the Sussex-Kent border to see this disruption happening. Many residents and businesses impacted, and I have to say that it's right the Chief Executive and the Chairman of South East Water have resigned, and I would urge the Government to look at the terms of the licence and whether those have been breached in this situation. But I also think we're here again in this chamber discussing another major water outage. The Minister knows we've had 2 major outages as well in my own patch. And what we see is time and time again the same mistakes and the same failures being repeated by the water companies. We looked at this on the Environment Committee and we found that they need to have clear plans of action in place, water stations in the right places, water stations that you can get to without a car, thinking about the impact on businesses and maybe delivering water to them to keep them open. All of these things every time get forgotten. And so could I ask the Minister to actually instruct all water companies in the country to have detailed emergency response plans in place for every constituency in the country that they work with the local MPs on, because we are the people on Christmas Eve, as happened to me last year, who've got the vicar's mobile numbers, the head teacher's phone numbers, and can set up those water stations. But they need to do that planning before disaster strikes and people lose water. So I urge her to look at that.
Minister.
Thank the Honourable Lady. So in fact, the licence, they have actually broken their licence conditions at the moment. Because of their credit, they've been downgraded by Moody's credit rating agency because of their performance issues, which is in fact, I think, the first time a credit rating agency has downgraded a water company over performance rather than over insolvency. So they are currently in breach of their licence. They're also being investigated on their licence from the Drinking Water Inspectorate. It could be Ofwat. I will double check. Under the consumer duty, it is by Ofwat under the consumer duty for the fact that they've had supply outages in December and January. So that is happening right now. On the emergency response plans, yes, absolutely, they should have emergency response plans. Clearly, the emergency response plans that this company have are inadequate, which is why that we want to work with the local resilience forum and with the water company, obviously with DEFRA officials as well, to make sure that they are improved before we have another short spell of hot weather.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Lady asked a very good question, which the Minister sort of touched upon, but I'm going to press her further, because parts of Merryworth Platt and often in my own area were left not only without water, but without the support necessary for those who are most vulnerable, until two fantastic councillors, Matt Borton and Sarah Hudson, both from East Peckham, really went in there and got into the fight with the water company to make sure that the water station was set up. What planning can she help with to make sure that that infrastructure is put in place? Because the water companies have got away with it for far too long. In this case, South East Water, let's not beat around the bush, has been the worst run company that I've ever come across, and it's quite right that the leadership has gone. By the way, Mr. Speaker, there are quite a lot of companies I've come across, so that bar is set quite high. But she has extraordinary discretionary authority to corral and to coerce companies to act. Could she please look at bringing forward a task group within regional areas in order to make sure that their water plans are in place and their emergency plans are in place, because otherwise we're going to have this again.
I thank the gentleman for his thoughtful question. And of course, they do have a duty, they have a statutory duty to provide wholesome water. And if in the event that they can't, they must include provisions of alternative water supplies. These are set out in the Security and Emergency Measures Direction for 2022. So they have that statutory duty to actually plan and prepare. I think that's a really helpful suggestion. I would want them to be working with the LRF to sort of look at this, because, I mean, in this case, it was just a water supply issue, but often when we have incidences, potentially if it's flooding that takes out water supply, it's more than one issue happening at the same time. So I think it's important that they work really closely with the local resilience forum. And what I can commit to do is contacting the company and the local resilience forum to ensure that they have those plans in place, and also recommend that they speak to the local members of Parliament about those plans to ensure that they are that they are felt to be satisfactory, and of course, the councils for the local resilience forum to make sure that they are ready for, what will be another potentially hot summer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Constituents of mine in Sittingbourne and Sheppey have been really, really worried and concerned as they've seen along the coast, Herne Bay and Whitstable, and residents there being deprived of their essential water supplies. I mean, it shouldn't have come as a shock. We know that there's been 15% extra usage of water during the heat wave the other week. But farmers in March and April were telling me locally that the water supplies were really, really low in the swales on Sheppey. We've got more investment coming, and it's really chalk and cheese in my area in the Swale, where we've got Southern Water and South Eastern Water. South Eastern are absolutely dreadful, whereas on Sheppey, which is particularly vulnerable to water supply issues, we've got a new water main coming, £4 million worth of investment there, and a massive new drainage system. It's really obvious the difference between these two companies. What I want to know from the Minister is, can she tell me how we're going to not just increase the amount of investment that's coming into the water system, but really deliver it at pace, and also how we can make sure that we don't have this postcode lottery in terms of whether you're going to get water or not, just because of the management of these firms.
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend. And the issue of farmers and water supply, I'm really keen to make it much easier for farmers to set up on-farm reservoirs. That's something I've heard repeatedly from farmers, that they find it difficult. So I want to kind of make that as simple as possible. I've spoken to too many farmers who tell me their frustration, particularly in the Suffolk area, where they say all winter we send all the water out into the sea, and then all summer we wish we had it back. So I want to do something about that. In terms of drought, each company has been told to produce a drought emergency plan ready for summer. That's for every single water company to make sure we are prepared for that. In terms of making sure they deliver what they promise, one of the things we did in the Water Special Measures Act is if they don't deliver what they promise, that money that they've taken to deliver it needs to be refunded to customers. That money has been ring-fenced. And we have the Water Delivery Task Force, which tracks all of the major projects to make sure they are on track and on budget. And if they're not, then we intervene as a government to understand why and what can be done to bring them back on track. But you're quite right, we shouldn't have this situation where because you live in a certain area you're suffering a much poorer service than if you live somewhere else. So this is why we want to take a bit of grip on the delivery of projects that should be delivered, but also kind of make it easier for people living in this area to be able to hold on to the water during the winter to make sure that they have it during the summer.
Rosie Duffy.
Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister, who's been engaged for a long time on this issue, and I know she really cares and talks to me and my neighbours. My neighbours and I just spend far too much of our time talking about the latest water shortages, and, you know, heat seems to equate to lack of water in the taps. I've got Whitstable has been devastated yet again, and we are really worried about too many new houses that aren't going to be able to meet demand, and also local businesses in the summer, like the excellent Nomad Pizza company that are independent and had to close for days during our tourism, hotspot. How can I reassure them? And most of my constituents, by the way, lots of them are very behind the nationalisation model. That's something I get a lot of emails about. But how can I assure them with our water tank 10 years, our reservoir 10 years from being built, how can I assure them that the tanks won't still be empty in July and August and we're going to suffer business-wise?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and that pizza business sounds great and definitely worth a visit in summer. But she's quite right. We need to be looking. So I said to the company when I spoke to them again on the Sunday evening, like, what are the immediate measures that you can put in place over this summer to make sure that we have enough water supplies? In terms of house building, I've had some really productive conversations with MHCLG about how do you build homes that basically use less water. What is it in the building standards that you can build a home to mean that you're not having to use the same amount of water in a different way? This happens all over the world. It's not sort of beyond our grasp to do that as a government. But I think fundamentally we're going to need to build the reservoirs. We're going to need the desalination plants. We're going to need those big sources of water. But I do also think that, as I've mentioned before, one of the things the company could do more immediately is tackle the leaks, because at the moment we are wasting too much water into the ground.
Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Residents in Dartford, like those across Kent, are also experiencing poor service and increased bills, including in Ebbsfleet, having to pay an additional sum for water to flow from their community wastewater into the Thames, a thing charged by the Port of London Authority called dewatering, which is incredibly unfair to them. What they ask me continually is why it's acceptable for this poor performance to be in place and for water executives to continue to pay themselves large bonuses. Can I just ask the Minister what work is going on in order to tighten the regulations so that reward actually matches performance going forward?
Yeah. Minister, please.
I totally agree with my honourable friend. As I've mentioned here before, I don't have an issue with bonuses per se. I just think it should be linked to how well you do your job. And what we've done with the Water Special Measures Act is obviously ban unfair bonuses. But what we have seen from some companies is attempting to exploit loopholes in which to continue to award them, and they're loopholes that we are determined to close.
Hello, mate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've had a few days of hot weather, and yet again in my constituency and across Kent, we've had water outages on top of what we've seen earlier this year and last year. Residents, businesses, livestock owners, they are frustrated, but they are also really worried, because getting water is the most basic thing in this country.
It's right that the Chief Executive and Chair of South East Water have gone. Yeah. My anger with them was particularly over their response and how they've handled these outages. But there is a longer-term problem of infrastructure and supply of water that's not going to be fixed overnight. There are 20,000 more houses coming in the pipeline from my constituency over the next few years, and thousands more in the surrounding area. Can the Minister tell me, is there enough water for these thousands more houses in rural Kent?
Minister.
The Honourable Lady raises an important point. I remember last time we were here talking about South East Water, how powerfully she described the impact on her constituents and on her businesses. So I know this is something she cares deeply about. As I say, one of the things we're doing through the Water Delivery Task Force is identify areas of the country where there are more acute water shortages, and therefore what actions can be taken to ensure people have the homes they need to live in, but also businesses have the water that they need, and it's not having a detrimental impact on the existing residents that live in that area. One of the things particularly about South East Water is they are reliant on a bulk supply agreement with Southern Water, so that's one of the things I'm sort of keen to sort of look into the details of, to make sure that that can be guaranteed whatever the circumstances Southern Water found themselves in. There are various other actions we can take. We mentioned around businesses and building standards and the ways that you build homes. In Cambridge, they've looked at retrofitting some homes to make them use less water. There's various other rules and regulations when it comes to business use of water. At the moment, we have a slightly bizarre situation where businesses have to use potable water. They're not able to use other types of water, which seems a bit crazy to me, that we're wasting drinking water for things that aren't drinking or for domestic customers. So I think there's a whole spread of different things in which we're looking at to make sure that we have the water that we need, because quite right to say that all the 9 new reservoirs and the desal plants and all that are brilliant, but they're not going to be here this summer and they're not going to be here next summer. So it's looking at that more immediate actions that we can take.
And just gently say it was about South East Water. The Minister seems to have opened it up by mentioning other water companies. But if we can try and concentrate on the theme, will be more helpful otherwise. And I'm going to test that example by Clive Efford, who I think is Thames Water, but I'm sure we'll link his question.
Absolutely. I'm asking a question about South East Water, because what we've got here is a company that fell over at the first short period of hot weather, and you have to wonder what planning has gone on in that company that it fell over so quickly in the season. And when are we going to call time on these water companies? Because the consistent failure that we get from them, whilst they're extracted enormous profits from the industry, has got to come to an end at some stage. I know my honourable friend is as frustrated as the rest of us with these companies, but it is time. There must come a time when we say to them, enough is enough, and we take control of these water companies for the public good.
Minister.
I thank my noble friend, and as highlighted, the white paper does talk about if companies wish to move into alternative ownership models. But I just want to sort of just briefly touch on special administration for breaching statutory duties, because under Section 37 of the Water Industry Act 1991, a water company has the duty to supply water within its area of appointment. A serious breach of these principal duties or of an enforcement order can be grounds for a performance SAR if that breach is so serious that it is no longer appropriate for the company to continue to hold its instrument of appointment.
Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I absolutely despair of South East Water. As we've heard from honourable members who represent Kent constituencies, they can't cope with large water outages. Neither can they cope with small water outages. In my Mid-Sussex constituency, the village of Staplefield has just gone through 30 hours without water, without bottled water being supplied, without good information, and even with misinformation. I understand that trying to fix decades of neglect in the water infrastructure will take a long time. So can I ask the Secretary of State, in her next meetings with executives at South East Water, will she ask to look at their communication plans so people know what's happening, get timely information and get the bottled water they need, seeing as outages seem to be par for the course these days?
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady, and she's absolutely right. It was one of the issues that we had in the conversation on Sunday, was that issue around communication and where bottled water stations should be. I was told in this incident that they'd work more closely with the LRF to listen to their advice on where to place them, but obviously if that's not the Honourable Lady's experience, then I'd be keen to hear about that so I can take that back to the company. what I will say, because it is an interim chair, and I know that she's keen to build new relationships with members of Parliament. She has assured me that she's going to be meeting members of Parliament, and I think this is something collectively, this issue around communication, this issue around where bottled water stations is one that I would say urge to raise with her directly, so that we've got them in the right place, because I think fundamentally members of Parliament and councillors know and understand their areas probably far better than a water company.
Matt Roll.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for watching today. It is much appreciated, but I'm running out of time, I'm afraid. So we're going to have to end it here. Don't forget, next week, 11:30 AM on Wednesday, we'll be back, same time, same place. Please make sure you hit that like button for me. Much appreciated all, and we will catch you soon.